Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Floating Fortress campaign character creation session with GreenZerg. GreenZerg, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. We allowed, since it's the first session, am I allowed to tell a little story? We can, do you know what? Peach, can make us cut it out if you want. Last night, I was sitting here in this very chair, right? And in the dark, in the corner of this room, the lights were off. I saw something move. Turned the light on, and holy shit, the spider I saw. Mate, I almost rolled for fucking initiative. This thing was like literally this big. It was fucking massive. And I had no choice but to man up and go and wake Fran up and get rid of it, because that was fucking terrifying. Holy shit. Okay, that's my story. Let's carry on.
Well, that's a great story. So we're here to make a character. I want to tell you a little bit about the setting before we hop in. I know that you heard some of the previous character creation.
I did,
but just in case you haven't, or in case someone's tuning into yours first for some reason,
Can't blame them.
Let's talk about what's going on. We've got this map here in the middle of the screen. This is the island that we're going to be playing on. This is a wild oversimplification. The island is not a perfect sphere. The lake in the middle is not a perfect sphere, right? This is just the working model while the rest of it gets put together. But this island is called Ferodia. You are from a small village in the middle of the lake, in the middle of the island. Your island and your village is called Aknara. And this is an important place because once upon a time, a long time ago, this island was the site of the greatest fortress in all the world, the mighty floating fortress of the Farron Empire.
All right.
Legend has it that the great Archmage himself built this fortress and used it to define the breadth and reach of his control. When finally satisfied with the extent of his domain, Ferris parked his fortress until need for it arose once again. Your village of Aknara was established by decree of the Great Wizard to guard the entrance to this great fortress, and has done so for 3 millennia. In that time, much has happened, and much has been lost. The secrets of the fortress were handed down from commander to commander in an oral tradition designed to prevent their theft and the fortress's misuse. Long after the great mage vanished and the empire crumbled, Aknara kept its secrets, guarded the mighty keep, and ritually passed this eternal responsibility from generation to generation. At the start of the last age, the Age of Iron, when the skies erupted and the seas invaded the lands, the last great commander was swept out into the lake and never seen from again. The line of secrets was broken. The land beyond the lake was sown with salt, famine, war, and strife as... This sentence doesn't make sense. Let's try that again. The line of secrets was broken, and the lands beyond the lake were soon sown with salt, famine, war, and strife. Ferodia was in turmoil. Aknara was not spared this difficult time, yet the responsibilities to the world were not forgotten. Centuries came and went. Commanders became overseers, kings became mayors, valorants became wardens, and archmages became armators. The ruins of the fortress on Aknara stud the land and remind the peaceful villagers of a time long ago when this small island was the center of all the power in the world. These days, the roles and positions are still held in esteem, but it has been 1,000 years since any significant event has occurred. Wizards, clerics, and adventurers of all kinds still come to Aknara in hopes of unlocking secrets of the past. An attitude of welcome but watch has helped curtail these would-be power seekers. When the bannerless army arrived during the start of what would become the Veil War, a cleric with an escort of ogres and giants arrived to conquer the island and retake the fortress. After a day of looking around and looting, they left, never to be seen from again. There was much ado about the Veil War on the rest of Ferodia, but Aknara was left in peace. Whereas once the role of fortress and defenders of Aknara was to protect the floating fortress of Ferris so that it would only be used by the great Archmage, now the roles are to make sure that the secrets of the past stay buried. and prevented from being found by those who would bring harm to the world. And that's the island upon which you are. And that's the society in which you live. And it's going to be the foundation of our campaign. Do you have any questions so far?
Very cool. You said the ruins of the fortress are on the island of Aknara?
There are ruins of fortresses on Aknara. Yes.
Okay. But the nature of and the entrance to whatever the floating fortress was is lost.
Yes.
So it's not like was it floating on the water? Was it floating in the sky?
That is up for debate.
Okay. Yeah. So we don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. And my second question is, does everyone in the village have some duty? Has everyone got a title, or is most people just people who live here?
Most people are people who live here. They don't have a official designation, but there is a pervasive attitude throughout the village that we are the descendants of the protectors of this thing. And even if I'm just a farmer and my only job is to farm, we're all in this together trying to keep these secrets,
Yeah. Yeah. It's the goal of the whole town.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have a specific duty, you've still got a duty to the town.
Yes. But also nothing significant has happened in 1,000 years. So it's the duty of the town, but it's almost more of the symbolic duty of the town.
Yeah.
No one actually has to do anything day to day. Yeah.
Okay. And where is this island in the grand scope of the world?
It is between the Dardanelles and between Solemn. So if you leave,
is it close or is it in the middle?
It's closer to Solemn than it is to the Dardanelles.
And Ferris's empire, was that literally the whole world?
So it was the whole world in the same way that the Roman Empire was the whole world, right?
So it's incorporated Solemn and the Dardanelles, presumably.
It had sections of Solemn, it had all of the Dardanelles, it had Arcadia, and then it went off into other directions, but the extent of it has been lost throughout the ages. Much of the known world has kind of faded from view.
And that was 3,000 years ago.
Was the peak of his empire, yeah.
How long did it last? I guess, how long ago did he disappear and the fortress was abandoned? Was that 500 years ago, or was it 2,500 years ago? So,
All of these dates are put back at 3 millennium, and there's not a lot of differentiation. How long the Farron Empire lasted is kind of up in the air. The consensus is that it was kind of a short-lived empire, but a lot of these things were passed down through oral tradition, or the original documents over the last 3,000 years have been destroyed. And so it's not clear if it's 100 years, or if it lasted 500 years, or if it was only a 50-year empire. Maybe it was just one person's lifespan, because Ferris was a human, so it couldn't have been 500 years unless he had magically extended ages. And then other people will say, well, no, hold on, he disappeared, but then the empire continued for a while, and a lot of what it was has been lost throughout the ages.
And he just disappeared, did he? He was just off doing some wizard shit and never came back.
The current mythology has it being that he vanished one day.
And my last question here is, not much is known about the Farron Empire, but if he was this great scholar, you would expect there to be a lot of records. And I know it's been a long time, but is it potentially maybe more information about the Empire is still in the fortress if it were to still exist somewhere?
I bet if you could get into the fortress, you would find out all sorts of information, right? Because it's a fortress, and if it hasn't been opened in 3,000 years, then...
that sounds so exciting. It'd make a great campaign. It's a shame it's lost.
It's lost for all time.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Your job is to sit here and make sure no one finds this exciting campaign.
Good. All right, well, I take it seriously.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. So... let's do some character creation.
Yeah, that's the bit I'm worried about. I saw Mutant stats, and even though they were good, ostensibly good, he had 13s and everything, but not really interesting or useful in any real way. I think if that same thing happens again, I'd like to make a deal with you where I could do take one off from somewhere and add one somewhere else, or maybe even take two off and add one somewhere else, just to make it a bit more spiky, you know?
Let's roll the dice. Let's figure out how it goes. We can adjust as needed, but let's do that same 3d6 twice for each stat. You don't have to pick the highest. You can just pick your favorite. I've assigned you a character sheet. You'll notice there is no perception stat, or there shouldn't be.
I see.
Getting rid of it.
Stat.
No, okay. It's gone now.
I'd like you to defend this decision.
What decision?
To get rid of perception.
It's not a default stat. I added it, and I think it causes more chaos than it does good sometimes. And I would like to once again experiment without it and see how campaigns run.
All right. Okay. 3d6 twice.
3d6 twice for your strength.
Okay.
Oh, we cannot have an 18 for strength. I'm sorry. That is. I
don't even want 18 strength, but I can't not take the 18 and something. I'm gonna keep rolling. We'll come back to it. Okay. I'll just put the 18 in there for now. But I don't want an 18 strength. I don't want an 18 strength.
Yeah, it is.
But you can't deny me to roll the 3 6s here.
Okay.
We can put it in a less important stat.
You know what?
We'll call it a 16 or a 17. Let's just see what else we roll.
We're just gonna see what else we roll.
This gives me a lot of leverage as I'm just pointing that out. Okay, an 11 in Dex.
Okay.
Con. 11. 7. I don't really want a 7 in Con, so take the 11.
A 12 for int.
Yep. Oof.
7 for wisdom.
Doesn't bode well for being a cleric, does it?
And charisma is 12.
Great stats.
Okay.
Maybe I'll go.
All right, now let me look at a plan for Nick.
Of all the things you envisioned here, me rolling an 18 on strength was not what you expected, was it?
It really, really wasn't.
I have to say, it's not what I expected either.
This character creation...
Before you steal my 18, I'd just like to point out people saying, I can't believe Nick's been so lucky. But let's just think about what's happened here. I've rolled an 18 in the one place where I'm not going to be allowed to use it. So is that lucky? Think about it.
It sounds like unlucky to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd mentioned before that we're not starting with character classes, and that when the campaign starts, there's going to be this big event that kind of sets you on your journey and helps define your character in a new light of everything. And the reason we're doing character creation and a little adventuring before that is to get a feeling of who we are, throughout most of our lives before things get crazy. And an 18 in any stat is extremely character defining and character breaking.
Here's my offer for you. Okay. Let me put the 7 in strength and then put a 16 in willpower.
Okay.
All right. Could I have got away with a 17?
No.
Yeah. All right. Boom. Great character. Just what I wanted.
Bonus of 2 against mind affecting spells. Okay. 7 in strength is an attack penalty of 1, weight allowance 20, max press 55. Okay.
Maybe just let me put an 8 in strength.
No, I think this is going to be great. Because you're looking at what you are now. I'm looking down the road at where your character is generally headed, and I think we've established enough trust that this is going to be good.
Yep, I'm all in. So fine.
All right. So your stats are 7, 11, 11, 12, 16, 12.
Yep.
Pretty good. Okay, let's talk about your name.
Yes.
And your race and all that fun stuff.
Well, my name is going to be Riven Thornleaf. I am going to be a half-elf, as I'm aware that this is an acceptable race choice.
Absolutely.
Yes, Riven Thornleaf. I'm a half-elf. My class is going to be Gardener.
Excellent.
What's a fancier name for a Gardener? Is there a better name?
Landscape Architect.
Yeah, that sounds lame though. I mean, you know, he's not weeding gardens, or she. That's another thing. Riven Thornleaf is non-binary / gender neutral. So I'm gonna put NB in sex.
Great. You could be a groundskeeper or a greenskeeper, a caretaker, a seedsman, a nurseryman.
I'm just gonna put gardener, I guess, but we know it's like they're a classy gardener.
Botanist. It's a little bit more scientific.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it sounds good though. A horticulturalist, whatever.
I love it.
Is that even how you spell that? I mean, how do you even spell that word?
I'm going to copy.
I spelled it right. All right. Okay. Their height. What's the height range for a half elf?
Let's take a look over here. Half elf. Half elves are usually 56 inches plus 2d8, so a little bit shorter than humans.
56 plus 2d8.
Yeah, that's a standard height range. 60 inches is 5 feet, so you're looking at like 4'10" to 6'2".
So 5'6" here.
Yeah, 5'6".
Can I change that?
Yeah, of course.
I want to be 5'3".
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, what about weight?
Usually a little bit lighter than humans. I don't actually have a weight calculator here. I say it averages around like 140 pounds. You're 5'3".
Yeah.
Yeah.
So quite
so you could,
7 strength, right? So quite slight. 110, 115?
Yeah, 110, 115 for a slight half elf at 5'3" is fine. It's perfect.
Okay. Let's go with 115. Okay, I've put height. Size, that goes there. What is size? Just medium.
Yeah.
Age, so I'm imagining they are like human years, like 30, 29, 30. Don't know what that is in half elf years.
I think half elves are generally 3 times as long lived as humans. So if you want to be their maturity, they reach maturity around the same time, like instead of 18, it's like 21, 22, 23. Okay. And then they have a slower aging from that point onward.
Okay, so it's like it depends whether I'm thinking about in terms of maturity of like personality or maturity of like age in terms of how old their body is. So I think that they are more mature than your average, 30-year-old human. So I think that they're going to be like, say, 60 years old.
Perfect.
They're quite wise, obviously, 16 wisdom. So they've seen a lot. They've lived like a whole human life, really, but also, still sprightly and young. Such is the curse of the elf.
Yes.
In human society.
Yes, you get to watch all of your friends grow up and die.
Yep. Okay, handed. I'll just roll the dice on this.
Please do. Right-handed.
So right-handed, yeah. XP 0. Yep.
Yep.
Alignment. I'm just going to write neutral good for now.
Great.
Languages, Common and Elven.
Yes. Well, let's talk about that Elven question, because that's going to be dependent upon your background. Like, if you were the child of a human woman who had, a one-night stand with an elf and then came back to human lands, you wouldn't speak Elven. But if you were raised among the Elven lands and then came here to visit, and settled down, then you would definitely speak Elven.
So I want to roll a dice here just to determine which one of my parents was an elf. So I'm going to roll a d2, and on a 1 it's going to be my mother, and on a 2 it'll be my father. So it's my mother that was the elf. So I'm obviously 60 years old at this point. I think my father has passed away. He was a human. My mother was deeply in love with my father. They had a loving marriage that lasted a lifetime, and she was with him till the very end. So I've been raised in a loving family where my mother was an elf and my father was a human, so it makes sense for me to speak both of these languages.
Okay.
And Riven is still very close to their mother.
Okay.
And they both loved, their father dearly.
Excellent. So I think that means now, if we take a look at the map, we're starting our campaign. Our campaign's based around this island of Aknara and the village on Aknara. This area to the northeast is sort of the Elven lands. Big Elven forest over here. So, is your father from Aknara, met your mother in these Elven forests, and then you have come back to Aknara after his death? Or are you from somewhere far away and you've then, come here for some reason or another? How did you, who was raised among elves, end up in this village?
I think, is there a port or something on this edge of the land here? On the edges of the Elven Wood, where maybe there's a few humans living, or where they do trade with the humans, or the people from the islands?
The mayor and the mayor's family are in charge of trade on and off the island, the importers and exporters, because all official roles are only part-time jobs. And so the mayor sort of runs trade with the rest of the island through his reach.
I think my father worked for the mayor in some capacity and would go on boats to the Elven lands to pick up supplies and things like that. And my mother met him while he was doing that job, and obviously he returned there quite often. So they'd see each other, and then eventually, kind of fell in love. And then, because it was a mixed race kind of relationship, I don't know how the elves would have felt like their father would fit in there. And so, rather than live in the Elven lands, they instead moved to Aknara, where father lived, where my mother, obviously because she's an elf, she's good with trees and plants and things like that, worked as a gardener, and that's why Riven does the same thing.
She moved to Aknar with your father and lived here on this island.
Yes,
with you guys.
But I think that, well, unless there's a reason why that wouldn't have happened, I think that, she still would have family in the Elven lands, and we'd go and visit. Maybe without my father, but the two of us would go, and so raised a little bit in the, you'd go and see grandma in the fucking Elven treehouse.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I just need to take a look at some things, because one of the backstory elements to this, we had mentioned the Veil War earlier, is that from Solemn comes the Bannerless Army, the Army of Verasi, a lot of names for them. And at some point they invade Ferodia and sort of conquer it and take over it and bring it into their empire. They go to Aknar to reclaim the floating fortress of Ferris, and there's just nothing here, and they give up because there's nothing here. Part of that includes a sort of a siege of the Elven lands to just kind of keep the elves out. They can never quite take them, or maybe they didn't want to take them. These Elven lands weren't destroyed like some other ones were, but for a time being, there's going to be a siege around this region. Considering that you are 60 years old, I think you will have been born well before this happens.
This is recent.
Yeah, this is fairly recent. I got to look at our start dates.
Okay.
And cross-reference with... Okay. So... we have a couple options here. One is that your family could have been separated by the war. Your mom went back to the forest at some point, you and your father were in Aknara, and then the siege kind of was set up and your mom couldn't get out. And the siege is continuing to this day. or your mom did escape or was on the other side of the wall, metaphorical wall, when the siege came up and is now stuck in Aknar with you and can't get home.
Yeah, okay. Is it still going on or is it over now?
The siege is still going on. The main island is still ostensibly controlled and run by the Bannerless Army, the Empire of Rossi.
So I had a thought that my mother was on the island here and my father, when this happened, was dying. And she decided to stay here on the island to be with him in his final months or whatever. To kind of be with him because they loved each other. But it's a source of sort of great regret and guilt to her that she didn't go back to the Elven lands to help kind of resist the Varasi invasion. The only thing I've got now is that why wouldn't she go back now? So
because how would she possibly what is she gonna do? Suicide run into the
okay yeah. So I think that, and I'm envisioning some sort of future campaign event where maybe there's a call to action for my character, where I think because their mother has lived with this regret of failing to take action to stand against evil, that could be like a motivating factor for my character further down the line to take action and actually do something and not stand by while evil is done. But not yet, because they wouldn't have such grand ambitions yet, but I'm just saying, something to look forward to.
Okay. You're about 60 years old.
Yeah.
So I think your mother's probably also a fairly young elf. Let me just look at my elven documents about... Let's see. So elves can live pretty long time. Easily up to 800 years, sometimes longer. Okay, so I think when your mother fell in love with your father, she was young for an elf. Think of a human in their late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, which makes sense,
18,
right?
19,
That's
20.
why she's done something a bit insane, marry a human.
Yeah, and then leaving the forest and going to live with him on this island. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're 60, then she probably had you when she was somewhere between, 40 and 100. Probably on the lower end of that.
Is that unusual for an elf?
It's a little... It is unusual, but it's not unheard of,
But not if you had a human partner, right? Then it would be quite typical.
Good question.
Well, because I'm saying if you meet someone when you're young, obviously they're going to die in 60 years, so you haven't got time to wait for a more mature age to have children.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. So I don't know.
We'll say that she was maybe 55 when she met your father. Riven's father. You said you're 60, did you say?
Yeah. Although maybe I should be a bit younger to make the maths a bit easier.
This math is fine, right? If you were 60, your father had met you or had you when he was 30, he would be 90, which means he's probably dead.
Yeah, but he's died recently, right? Well, how long's the siege been going on?
I don't think I picked an exact year, but let's say 20 years.
Oh, okay. Then fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could have been a decade ago that he died.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
Okay. Excellent. And your father was a gardener, or what was your father's role? He was working with the mayor on transportation.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think he was more like an odd jobs kind of guy,
All right, so we're going to say your father is the former mayor's brother.
Okay.
Because the mayor's family does all the trade, but we don't want him to be the actual mayor itself because I have plans for that guy already.
But would it not just be could you not just be a handy, a guy that worked for him? Or does he have to be related? Because surely this guy hasn't got that many brothers. Maybe a cousin through marriage or something.
Are you talking about Riven or who?
No, that my father.
Right. Yeah, doesn't have that many brother. I mean, I don't know. He could have as many siblings or lack of siblings as
I'm
you
just
want.
saying that, like, it's not a typical way to run a business where you only work with your own brothers.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because I'm saying, like, I'd rather my family not be like the mayor's brother. That feels like quite a big story point that I hadn't kind of like imagined.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, then we can say that you were one of these people that, handyman, kind of a odd job sort of person, maybe a lower ranking person, a laborer is what we'll call him.
Yeah, a laborer. Yep.
Helped load cargo. Okay. So she, is this the sort of thing where your mother moved to Aknara and has been living here with your father ever since you came into the picture?
Well, no, since they met, since she moved, since they married.
Got it. So she left the Elven lands to come here, and then like you guys visit every now and then.
Yeah, but not since the siege.
Right. Okay. All right. So she's the only elf living on this island, just so you know.
Okay.
Unless Jamie or Jan all of a sudden needs an elven backstory, but they're probably going to be the only one.
Make them be humans. Yeah.
Well, I would love another half elf, but we'll see.
Okay. Could be a half elf whose parents aren't on the island.
Yes, there are other half elves here. The current Armator is like a 200-something-year-old half elf. Armator's the it's actually probably a useful point to tell you. There are 4 important roles in this town. There's the mayor, who once upon a time was like the king, way back before the Age of Iron. They were the leader of the village and protector of the lands. Their responsibility included maintaining diplomatic relations and intelligence gathering to prevent invading forces from attempting to seize Ferris's floating fortress. This position used to reside in a different city, but was reestablished here in Aknara when the skies erupted and the seas invaded the lands and contact was cut off with the rest of Ferodia. So what used to be sort of the king guarding the fortress who lived somewhere else is now the mayor, and they're in charge of diplomatic relations and imports and exports. The commander is now the overseer. When the village that you're in right now was a fortress, the commander oversaw its defenses, its maintenance, and the protection of its secrets. At the start of the last age, the commander was lost, and the fortifications were damaged beyond repair. With no help from the rest of Ferodia, the new commander cannibalized the fortress's remains to build a town, turned swords into plows, and used the cataclysmic event to rebrand the fortress's defenders into like a quiet, peaceful village. The plan of defense through secrecy has lasted ever since. The term commander was changed to overseer when they brought the mayor on board and kind of, begin to modernize the village. The overseer now works with guardians to patrol the land, to keep an eye out for clues to the past, and deal with those who would seek legends of the fortress. The guardians are the wardens, who used to be called valorants and defenders. Once upon a time, the role of valorant was for brave knights, warriors, clerics, and wizards who had proven their mettle and wished to enter the next phase of their life. The position of valorant was a recognition of honor, so that these great people might serve out their days in an important role that still gave them room to raise families and enjoy their golden years. When the Farron Empire fell apart, the title of valorant lost its meaning as the position was inherited through the generations, and defender became the preferred term up until the skies erupted and the seas invaded the lands. Since there was nothing left to defend, the term warden took over. So the wardens now work for the overseers, and there's 12 of them at any given time. With the current position of Armator, which the half-elf occupies, used to be known as the Archmage, It's sort of an advisor, a counselor, a wise man, and a diviner all rolled up into one. The commander and the archmage were keepers of secrets, only for different kinds. Whereas the commander knew the secrets of the keep, the archmage knew the secrets of the keys. The last archmage died in the middle of the last age, and his body was interred on a nearby hill. This site was looted during the early age of iron, and the body was stolen. That's when I said nothing of significance has happened the last millennia, last 1,000 years. This is the last significant event. 1,000 years ago, someone stole the last archmage's body from the tomb. But it's been 1,000 years, and nothing's happened since then.
Okay.
The position of armator is now typically held by an elder half-elf who remembers the most. That's usually given to a person who's been around. And so your current armator is a Cassia, a half-elf who's 240 years old. So that's the other most important half-elf in the village. Cassia?
Right.
How do I write these things down and I never know how to pronounce them. I think it's Cassia. Caysiya.
Cay.
Siya. Way too many vowels, but you know
need
what?
to lose that first Y.
But then it wouldn't be
Cassia.
Case. Yeah, but I don't want it to be Cassia. I want it to be Cassia.
Okay. What's the name of the mayor?
The current mayor's name is Bromit. He's young. The old mayor has recently passed away, and he's 32 years old. He's right-handed, and he is a follower of Varasi, but not in the Varasi Empire way. More in the way of I am watching over a village, which is at the end of its time. It's been here for 3,000 years. All things come to an end, and I'm kind of in touch with the deity that most embodies endings and the end of life and the end of things as they are. The invading army and empire of Varasi, he does not get along with. They're focused on death and destruction. He's that's the wrong vibe. It's about closings and ending spaces.
Cool. All right, I'm going to ask you about the other two as well. What's the name of the overseer?
Haven't got that sorted yet.
Okay.
You are going to be one of the 12 wardens, though. That is a must-have for the start of our campaign.
Oh, okay. Why would I be a warden then?
Well, let's figure that out. Okay. This is a part-time job. It's fairly symbolic. You walk the island, you walk the land, you work for the overseer. Your job as warden, it's this ancient role. The ancient role used to be defend the fortress. It used to be a position of high honor back when it was Valorant. Nowadays, once a weekend, once a month, you do a walk around the island. If anyone's coming around looking for things, it's your job to keep an eye on them. Don't get in their way, but if they discover any interesting secrets or any interesting ruins, definitely take note of it. Part of the campaign is that your job is as warden.
Okay.
So how are you a warden?
How does one become a warden? You said it was inherited.
It's often inherited. Symbolically, there are 12 wardens at a time, but sometimes a warden bears no children, or their children die or are unsuited for that position. So it's quite possible that you have no family members who had this job. Or it could be one of those things where it skips a generation, where your grandfather or grandmother on your father's side was a warden, didn't pass the title down to your father, and it got passed down to you instead.
I'm thinking it's a family friend on the island who was a warden, who didn't have any children, who has since either died or retired due to old age, and Riven and her mother were friends of this person and helped them and looked after them in their old age, because that's the kind of people they are, nice people. Mm-hmm. And this person, as they got old and had to retire their position, asked Riven to do it, and they've kind of begrudgingly accepted out of respect for them and out of duty, respect for the title as well, but it's not necessarily kind of how they saw their life going or something that they super identify with.
Okay. How would you feel about this family friend being like a half-elf second cousin of your mother's?
Yeah. That sounds good.
Couldn't have kids of their own, started to get older, your mom is here with you.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to take care of the people around you, but there's like an extra special connection because like that elven sisterhood thing is going on. And then they pass it off to you. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could be something like if they're a half-elf and they're living on this island, but much older, they could have had a similar love story to my mother and father, but generations past. And they were also kind of ostracized a bit, so that when my mother did that and moved here, it made sense for them to kind of like become closer because they had a shared sort of experience.
Okay. Great. I'm gonna roll
Sorry,
a d2.
that would be their parents, not
Right.
them. Yeah, sorry.
So this other warden is a woman, a female half-elf.
Yeah.
You want to use one of your name generators there to come up with a name for them?
No, you can come up with a name if you want.
All right.
Or I could say Ashen. I think it's quite a good name.
Sure.
Yeah. I also need names for my mother and father.
Please come up with those.
Yeah. So her surname, or their surname of Thornleaf comes from their mother.
Right.
And my mother's name is... I just gotta pick a good one because I'm gonna be saying it a lot, you know. Ellis Thornleaf. And my father doesn't have a second name. His name was just... Let's think of a really good, wholesome, human male name. The only name I can think of, Neil, is John. But that's not a good name, so help me come up
Gus,
with that
one. Brad.
No, not Brad. That's ridiculous. It's not American.
Ronald.
No.
Reginald. Wholesome.
Yeah.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Bartholomew.
I have a tendency to use these kind of names. I like picking kind of like too mundane names. It needs to be a bit more D&D coded.
Bartholomew.
It's Bartholomew. Oh, I don't know. I don't like it.
Bart.
No. What are some names? Why can't you think of some names?
Excuse me.
To think of names, should it?
Yeah. Yeah, shouldn't.
And
Where are all of your names that you're coming up with here?
It is. I don't know any names.
Grant is a good one.
Okay. Yeah, Grant. No. Okay, Grant, yeah. I was going to say Hugh Grant, but no. So his name is just Grant.
Yeah.
He's dead now. RIP.
Grant is your father, right?
Yeah. And so my half-elf third cousin, who is dying, what did we say their name was? Or did we not?
Ashen.
Ashen, yeah. Cool.
Okay, and what was your mother's name?
Ellis Thornleaf.
Ellis?
Yeah.
And your name is Riven. Is that Rivin? En?
Ian.
En. Thornleaf is how it's spelled. Great. Okay, so what was this warden's name? This cousin of yours?
Ashen.
Right, okay. Ashen welcomed your mother, Ellis, to the island. Ashen had a similar backstory where one of her parents was an elf who came to live on the island with a human. This Ashen was a cousin of Ellis. Right. Okay.
Yeah. And I think Ashen is still alive. And so I think my mother spent a lot of time with her and looking after her.
Still alive, but retired is what we're going to say.
Yeah.
So when Ashen decided to retire as a warden, she passed the role on to Riven. She had no children of her own. Perfect. Love it. Great. I think you have no siblings. No siblings? One sibling? Two siblings? How many of you are there?
No siblings.
Why is there only the one?
I think it's
Like your
maybe...
parents are so loving. Did they not get down? Did they have awkward sex conversations and just couldn't make the passions reignite? Why are you siblingless?
I don't think it's that. I think it's more that it's quite, from an elven point of view, it's quite sad to see your father die when you're so young.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my mother was reluctant to have another child because of that.
Okay. Only one of the one.
I'm not considering that contraception was not really an option. So
well, there are magical means and there are non-magical means. There are myths and legends about a plant that existed in the real world in the Mediterranean Sea that, when ground up, worked as sort of a either a contraceptive or as an abortive herb, and it was just like used to extinction, but it was used as a contraceptive back in ancient days. I don't know if there's any truth to this, but there are
Such
real world
things,
legends
yeah.
of plants that could have performed this duty. So,
you know, like I said, my mother was a gardener and a herbalist, so it makes sense that she'd know something about that, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah, we also have fertility totems and infertility totems, and I think elves tend to only have a few kids, so it might just be that, like, humans can have Irish twins, right? Kids who are born in the same year, but I think maybe elves just
What makes them
naturally...
Irish?
Oh, it's just a slur on Irish people that, like, they have so many kids that Irish twins are kids who are born in the same year.
I've got something like 29 cousins between two sets of parents.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Wait, does that mean one of them had 14 kids and the other has 15 kids?
It's like, yeah, I actually might be like 17 and 12, but yeah.
Oh my god.
I know.
17?
I don't know the numbers because, as you can imagine, you know, there's a lot to keep track of, but there's a lot of them.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so but what I'm getting at is that it could just be that elves cannot, once having had a child, it takes them 20 or 30 years before they can bear children again.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility.
I also think that, like, maybe it's harder to conceive a half-elf child than a fully elven one.
Okay. Can do. So your mother is still quite young then.
Yeah, I guess so,
is, she was 55, you're 60, so she's 115 years old.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to roll some stats for her. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, she's an elf. Why don't we roll? I have a slightly different stat generation option for elves over here. Why don't you roll these for her? Her strength is 3d4 plus 2.
Makes sense.
Okay. Her dex is d6 plus 13.
Oh.
Just trying to write these down over here. What did you get? You got 8, 19. Oof. Con is d4 plus 8.
11.
Int is 2d6 plus 6.
12.
Wisdom is 2d6 plus 6.
17.
And charisma is 2d6 plus 6.
17. Holy
Wow.
shit. Wait, can I just play her instead?
Absolutely not. Okay, so the 19 in Dex, according to second edition, which is what we're based off of here, you roll 3d6 for stats. Elves get a +1 to Dex, and they get a -1 to Con. So rather than doing +1, -1, for my NPCs, I've developed this other method of rolling stats. I really like the idea that humans are creatures of chaos, and they can have a very broad range of stats, whereas all of the other different races have, like, more centralized, narrow-banded things.
It's cool, yeah.
Yeah. But that really high wisdom, really high charisma is interesting.
I mean, you can change it if you want.
Yeah, I think the wisdom's a little bit too high. She ran off with a human and moved to his little village in the middle of a lake. So it ranges between 7 and 18. We're just going to roll another 2d6 plus 6. We're going to give her 12 wisdom. That's crazy pants. But I will keep the 17 charisma and we'll keep the 19 dex, definitely.
Okay.
All right.
What level is she? Like, is she a high-leveled character, or is she, like, not got a class?
The tradition of her people is everyone gets a little bit of martial and magical training from early ages. It's just a natural part of elven society and elven culture. These things usually take a long time, and she bounced when she was pretty young, so she would have missed out on a lot of that stuff. She probably is... We'll give her the +1 to short swords and long swords, and +1 to bows, but we'll say 0th level.
Okay,
so
cool.
That kind of puts her halfway between a 0th level character and a 1st level fighter.
Yeah, I think maybe, this kind of guilt of, like, not going to defend the Rochecorp woodlands from the Varasi Empire is also tied up for her because she abandoned her training, right? So, like, even if she wanted to, she wouldn't be any good because she never stuck around for the martial and magical training that they all said that she should do. Yeah,
and, in theory, if there had not been this invasion and this siege... Like, she could pick it up at 100 years old, and she still has 700 years left to do this stuff. So it's always like, it can be deferred, but now it's been deferred, and she needs it, but she can't have it.
Yeah. Perfect. So she's left it too late, and now when she needs it, it's not there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think it's time to roll some HP and pick your weapons and non-weapon proficiencies.
Okay.
Our characters will need at least half HP, so why don't you roll me a d4 plus 4 for hit points?
Oh, wow. Yeah, you are treating us. 7.
Okay.
Oh, 7 HP.
Yes. Excellent. Now for non-weapon and weapon proficiencies. Let's see. You are from an elven family, but your father is just like a laborer. Your father's fairly uneducated. He didn't know how to read and write. Mm-hmm. He was just a good, happy man who fell in love with an elf, it seems like. But your mother would have been very well educated, at least to the extent that she was before she left.
Yes. However, Ashen could have done her. She was a warden, so she was likely to have been fully trained. So
there's not much like formalities in warden training. It's sort of a
but I mean, what I mean is, like, she came to the island and was, made a warden for whatever reason, and I think that could be attributed to the fact that she was probably quite, like, she'd been through the elven training, right? So she was quite a stronger fighter. Oh no, maybe not. No, sorry, she's a half.
No, because you lived here on the island for a long time. Like, you would visit, but you wouldn't necessarily have been.
No, I understand that. My thinking was that this older elf, Ashen,
I see.
the cousin, could have had. So even though her mother and her father went, or their mother and father went, trained fighters or whatever, maybe Riven could have picked up some training from Ashen.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Although I don't know. I mean, I don't particularly envision the character as a great, fighter.
Yeah.
Strength and all.
Well, right now my concern is mostly around non-weapon proficiencies. How well educated would you have been? If your mother was a gardener, your father was a laborer. Do we want to start you with? I'm trying of the class groups: warrior, wizard, priest, rogue. I'm wondering which one most resembles Riven at this point in their life. Probably not wizard. Probably not warrior.
No, I
don't think you have priest education. Maybe more of a roguish figure. 3 non-weapons and 2 weapon proficiencies.
Yeah,
that sounds good. So for non-weapons, you're going to get 3 plus your number of languages, which is 0.
Mm-hmm.
So what 3 non-weapon proficiencies would you like?
Herbalism.
Okay.
Okay. Is that going to take up more than 1 slot?
Let's see. Your mother is a gardener, so we can say you have... what do you call it?
I'm a gardener too.
That's true.
Yeah.
So it does take 2 slots. That'll be most of your skills right there.
Yeah. I'll pick something else.
I've sorted it by rogue class so you can see what is easy to get.
Would direction sense come under wisdom now?
Probably, but also there's no need for that. You're on a small island. The mountain is there's a bit of a ridge that runs along the middle of the island, and that helps you always find your direction. It's very clear. We're nixing direction sense.
We don't need it.
Don't need it.
Can there be like artistic ability gardening?
Yeah, like flower arranging and
like, yeah, just like, you know, good at making a place of like wildlife look beautiful in terms of like knowing how to like prune the plants and make them grow nice and like encourage them to grow in a certain way so that they stay straight, and you know, knowing when to water them and when to plant them to make them bloom the most full.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Kind of thing. Are you worried that my character's going to be useless if I do this?
Not at all.
Right, cool. Because it's hard to imagine like that you'd have too many other skills, really. Because you're not an adventurer, and you've not got a great education, so. Okay, can I make that a willpower stat? Artistic. Oh, it is willpower. Great.
Yeah. Yep.
And herbalism, is that willpower?
It's intelligence -2.
Oh, that's not good. Maybe I don't want
That's
herbalism.
all right.
Is it alright? I mean, when do you have to make a herbalism check? So, I only got 10 int. It's not that bad, but... Like, for example, like, if I'm trying to make a poultice that I've made 100 times before, I'm going to have to roll a herbalism check every time and fail it 50% of the time.
Let's see.
You know what I mean? So it would just feel bad for that to be the character's central thing, and then they keep failing the skill.
Right. So you can identify plants and fungus and prepare... So I think with the herbalism proficiency, there's a certain amount of stuff that you don't need to roll for that you can just identify, and that you would need to roll for that stat when you're trying to identify like unusual things that are beyond your recognition. Like you come across a brand new plant that you've never seen before, and you're inspecting it and trying to figure out what it might do or how it might behave or how it might grow. In that situation, you might need an herbalism check to notice like, oh, this looks very similar to this other thing. It might need similar nutrients needs. I would say if you're trying to...
Can I ask, why is healing wisdom based? Because it makes me think, well, I'd be better off picking healing than herbalism. But I feel like if healing can be wisdom, then can't herbalism be wisdom too?
I think healing at this time is a lot more like intuition based, and herbalism at this time is a lot more knowledge based. In the modern world, healing is knowledge based. You go to medical school, you memorize a bunch of stuff, you actually know how things interact. At this time in the world, with the understanding of the world, how things interact, you're very much like, I think it's a lot more intuitive, a lot more gut based, a lot more, a lot of guesswork. I think that's why they make it wisdom. But I agree, in the modern world, healing is not wisdom-based. It's definitely intelligence.
Yeah, I just don't want my one skill to be bad. You know.
Yeah, I hear you.
I've done animal handling so often that I don't want to do that this time.
Well, you'll be fine. Herbalism and gardening are great.
Yeah, it's just just needing a 10 is just quite bad. Or needing 11, sorry. To pass the test.
Yeah. I don't think it'll come up very often. Okay. Well, the die roll won't, but the skill might. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, fine. I'm envisioning us like, we found this plant and it's really integral to work out what it is, but I failed my check and now we've got to wait till we level up to be able to use the one skill that I've got. So I'm just trying to avoid that situation.
Yeah.
But,
well, herbalism by the book doesn't call for any die rolls. It just says these things, XYZ. So it's a skill that doesn't have a lot of die roll involved.
Okay, cool. Maybe I can get my mum to help me.
Yeah. You're also going to need weapon proficiencies. We're going with the rogue skill. You get 2. Yeah. You've been trained by a former warden. So...
Is there any restrictions on what weapons I would use?
Wardens typically use swords and spears and bows.
What are some, elven weapons?
Elves typically use swords and bows, and swords and bows are their go-to.
I'm assuming that if my character ends up being a cleric, it's not going to matter if I've got a sword proficiency.
Don't worry about what you will be. Just figure out who you are now. Trust me, said the DM to his party.
So I'm thinking of you might use a little machete thing in gardening, cut through roots and things like that. So, and given that Ashen asked her to take her position, I'm imagining that Ashen has given her her weapon at this time as a symbolic gesture of passing it on to you. And I think she probably would have used a sword because she's a half elf. So
yeah,
I think that
you also got a breastplate passed down to you as well. We can talk a little bit more about that later.
I'm not sure I've got enough strength to wear a breastplate, but
I don't think you do. But it's your symbolic breastplate that you probably have to put on, and then 55 max press is rough.
This is what I'm saying. You took 2 off my 18. I feel like you should just bump the strength so I don't have a -1. So how much difference does an 8 make there? That gets it to 90, which is much more reasonable.
Yeah, if you're a warden and you're expected to maybe protect these things, well, wardens come. Not all wardens are fighters. A warden could also be a wizard or a rogue. Warden is more of a responsibility job. So maybe this breastplate was passed down to you, but you don't wear it because you're not the sort of warden who goes and fights things melee, hand to hand. You're more of a warden who would, watch and oversee and use your cunning and your guile and your smarts to manage these issues. So the breastplate probably just sits in your house.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it weighs 30 pounds, so you could technically put it on and walk around in it, but
I'm going to take short sword.
Great.
And maybe it's time to bring back the most legendary of weapons in my history, which is the
quarterstaff. Oh, the sling. Okay.
I think it's time to bring back the sling. Because
excellent.
I've had a lot of success with the sling. I don't know if everyone watching this knows this, but I've done some amazing things with slings. The best things.
you know, you
a
have
lot of
minus
people are saying it, Neil. A lot of people are saying it. I do great things with slings.
Oh my god. The penalty that you get with strength applies to
For God's
melee
sake.
weapons like your short sword and to your staff, and I think it would also apply to bow, but it does not apply to sling.
Well, there you go. Makes perfect sense then.
I think.
Well, there's no damage adjust, which I think might have
Right.
applied with sling, but not with to hit, perhaps. Because it's like a ranged weapon. It's not a thrown weapon, which is where the rule comes from.
Right. You wouldn't apply it on a crossbow, but you would apply it on a bow because a bow.
No, you
needs
wouldn't
a
apply
certain
the
amount of
-1
strength.
to hit, would you?
Well, a bow has a certain weight that it needs to be pulled with in order to be effective. So you're either reducing its range, but we don't change range for bows based on strength, or you would reduce the bonus to hit. Sling, however, is not. You don't need to be super strong. It's a lot more about aiming, and it's about just spinning something up and gaining momentum. So you definitely don't have a hit penalty with your sling.
Right.
Perfect. All right, we've got skills, non-weapon proficiencies, we've got weapon proficiencies, we've got stats, we have more or less of a backstory. Let's figure out your special racial abilities, your special species abilities.
Now we're talking.
Classes, races, half-elves. Half-elves characters have a 30% resistance to sleep and charm-related spells. Your infravision enables you to see up to 60 feet in darkness. Secret or concealed doors are difficult to hide from half-elves. Merely passing within 10 feet of a concealed door gives you a 1 in 6 chance of spotting it. If you're actively seeking to discover hidden doors, it's a 1 in 3 chance of spotting a secret door, or 1 in 2 of locating a concealed.
I'm just writing can see secret doors. You'll have to
That's
remember
fine.
the details. Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of those things where perception sort of overrode the original spot checks that they have in 2E, but they only have spot checks for secret and concealed doors, and that's it. So we added a perception stat, and I think it's a little bit too much. So we're getting rid of it again temporarily, at least just to feel it out again. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to know? You don't have any siblings, but talk to me about your position in town, what you foresee yourself as doing. Like, you've been here a while.
Yeah.
You're one of the older people in town.
Yeah. I think Riven has a deep connection with the town. She's lived on this island her whole life, their whole life. They've, known kids that have grown up into adults and aged into older people. They basically know everyone on the island. I imagine it's not that big. They've got friends. They help people out. They're generally a nice person to be around who goes out of their way to help others and do good things and comfort people. So I think they've got a very deep connection to the island and the people here, and feels like home. So they've probably got a good set of friends that they'll sit with in the tavern, but it's much more of it. It's not like, go to the booth and just sit with their friends every day. The pub's a much more like social thing. You go in, oh, hey, John, you're here today. How's the wife? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
How's the puppy doing? Etc., etc.
Okay. As a gardener, farmer, like what is your primary role? Isn't food production, or is food production?
No, I don't think it's food production. I think it's like so does it have to be a job where we're getting, like, this job is to survive, so we have to be getting paid?
You have to be getting paid, right? You have to make ends meet.
Are there wealthy people here?
Not a lot.
Yeah, but is there potentially a house where they need a gardener?
No, it's a small village. The mayor's family is the closest thing that you have to nobles, but even that is not super noble.
Are there some important places on the island that have like historical importance to the fortress and to Ferris? That have like gardens or paths that need to be maintained, to make them look nice and pleasant for people who come to visit? Because I'm kind of, you said they're a warden, right? So they're kind of like walking around the cliffs and the hills of the island and making sure that no one's digging around in things that they shouldn't be digging around in. So I'm imagining that they spend a lot of time walking around, you know, like pruning the plants and making sure the paths are clean and just generally making the place pleasant to look at.
There are certain things that need to be tended to. For example, there's this big ridge that comes up the middle of the island. It's a big, like, mountain. You would call it, some people might call it a mountain. It's really more of a hill that has some steep cliffs on either side of it. And there's a path that runs up it. And this is one of those things that's important to maintain for wardens. Like, you want to maintain certain lines of sight to clear choke points for, like, you're walking up and then the path narrows and you want to be able to see that path from ground. And so you need to maintain that there's a line of sight there. You need to keep plants down. You need to make sure no bushes grow in the way. That way, if someone's sneaking up onto that hill, like, you can kind of spot them ahead of time.
That's a bit more practical, though. Is there no, like, statues of Ferris or old monuments or, like, a fountain in the town or, like, a little bit of a garden in the middle of the town? Like, I feel like it wouldn't be hard to imagine that a village might have a few things that require one or two people to maintain.
Curator of the commons is what you're talking about.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So you can be the curator of the commons.
Yeah.
So you are probably paid by the state. That is, the state is a strong phrase here. The mayor collects some amount of money from everyone, doles it out. You're probably a fairly low-paid individual then. You don't actually have much in the way of wealth.
I think that both Riven and her mother, or their mother, are, simple people. Like, we're elves. We're not humans. We don't covet wealth and fancy things. Just happy being amongst the nature and living a peaceful life and helping the people around us, So, I don't think there's not much need for material possession.
Okay, and you probably would maintain your own personal gardens from which you could eat. So you've got your leafy greens and your this and your that. So you can you end up growing a lot of your own food. You make a little bit of money by being the curator of the commons, and then you can, like, do a couple of extra things here and there.
Now that I'm thinking about it, right? So when my mother had to start looking after her father, she stopped doing her job as the curator of the commons, and that's when I started doing it. So the salary transferred to me. And I think mother, now that father has died, because we've got such a beautiful garden, there's like a bit of there's a few tables out there, and we serve some tea and maybe some cakes every now and again, for the locals as they're wandering around, so they can come and sit in the nice garden, have a piece of cake, a cup of tea, and it's like a nice kind of relaxing, wholesome, calming, very demure, very cutesy, very mindful place to be.
Okay, so she has, can I call it a cafe or
you can call it a cafe, but that's
a tea house, maybe?
It's like a tea garden. Tea garden. Like, if it's raining, you just don't come. Like, there's no...
Got it.
Well, you can, but there's no, like, inside bit to it. It's just, you come and sit in the garden and you'll get a cup of tea and a piece of cake or a pie or whatever that, she's made.
Right. Okay. Simple people, not a lot of wealth. You make do with what you have. Grow some of your own food. Mother has the tea garden. But this tea garden is also, like, a short-term thing. Like, when the siege is over, when the Empire of Rossi falls away, whenever, and that inevitably is, I imagine she would head back home, at least to check in with people, probably be gone for a few years. Yeah. This is not a career. This is something that she's doing to pass the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that, like, every day she probably goes and collects Ashen and brings her to the tea garden, and she'll, like, pretty much be like a mainstay in the garden there, sitting there. So, like, that's where they spend time together. She works in the garden.
Wouldn't you?
After Ashen and also...
You probably live together.
Oh, yeah, I guess so, yeah. There's probably not that much property going around.
Yeah. Okay. Small, simple abode.
Yeah.
Simple abode. Nice gardens.
Beautiful gardens.
I'll upgrade that to beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like the nicest place in the island, actually. in terms of natural beauty. Like, you know that an elf lives here, you know? Like, it's truly really, really, really nice.
Love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So you would know MrMouton's character. His name is Cedric Smith. He is the 23-year-old, 6'5", 200-pound son of the Smith in town. He's a youngster with great promise. He's got really good stats across the board. He's sort of dated everyone in his age bracket, but hasn't settled down with anyone. His father is the existing Smith, but his father is really into gardening, and he spends a lot of time with the Gardeners Club. Since you're into horticulture and botany, I imagine you yourself are a member of the Gardeners Club here in town.
I wouldn't be surprised if my mother is the
president.
The president of the Gardeners Club.
Yeah, we're not going to use the word president though. We'll need something a little bit more sweet.
Demure.
Yeah, I keep hearing. Is demure back? I hear that phrase everywhere these days. What's going on?
It was like a TikTok meme where if I've seen the original, it's like these people have got their mother to do like an advertisement of selling a house, and in one bit she's like describing one of the rooms, and she's like, it's very cutesy, very demure, very mindful, and it just went up on TikTok.
I see programmers using it. I see interior decorators using it. Now I see D&D players using it.
There you go. Yeah.
The word is back.
It's back, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard that since the
rivers took over the land and the chasms.
Oh God, what's the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger where he goes to Mars?
No. That's such a Total Recall.
Yeah, I haven't heard the word demure since I watched Total Recall like 20 years ago.
I can't say I remember the word demure in Total Recall, but
he's being interviewed about like what his ideal sort of woman is, and he's being like, they're listing traits that she might have, and demure is one of the traits. But that's the last time I've ever heard anyone use it, and now
well, yeah, it's common parlance in England.
Well, I'm so sorry I'm not cultured like you all.
It's all right. That was apparent years ago.
Oh, buddy. All right. So your mother runs the tea garden now, and is the what of the garden club?
We need a synonym for president of the club.
Yeah, some sort of leader, organizer, den mother,
governor.
It's a little powerful. What's more of like a not ruler, but
Principal?
first among equals.
Prefect.
These are all like very formal, powerful names and roles.
Rector. The top dog. The head honcho. The CEO.
The general of the garden club.
General of the Gardeners Club, yeah. The spokesperson.
Why don't we just say gardener general?
That's
like attorneys
insane.
general.
You can't say gardener general. That's mad. What's wrong with what did I just say? I said a good one.
Said a lot of things.
The chairperson or the spokesperson. Too formal.
It's too formal.
The chancellor.
This is like a group of friends who have come together. The Gardeners Club is like 20 people. They meet at your mom's place, your place every now and then. Your mom sort of gets everyone together, is the main teacher.
The chair. The speaker.
That's so formal. If you were going to get together with a bunch of your friends and do something once a week, and who would you call the lead organizer of that? You wouldn't call them the speaker. You'd call them the...
administrator?
What's a casual term for leader?
I mean, I've said so many words, I don't know. You don't like any of them. I mean, to be a leader is in itself authoritative, right?
Doesn't have to be.
The steward. Ellis Thornleaf, steward of the Gardeners Protectorate.
The local gardeners club, gardeners club.
No, it's got a name. It's called the Ankaran Horticultural Society. Why not? That's a good name.
Okay, all right.
The Ankaran Horticultural Society.
Cultural Society. All right. Aknar and Horticultural Society.
And one of the main duties of the steward is to share news of the Aknarin Horticultural Society with the other horticultural societies elsewhere in the world. So there's probably some once a year letter exchanges with.
I think that's too big. It's expanding beyond its needs. There
might be there's probably another horticultural society in Ruskala, right?
This is a very small, demure town. There's not a lot of back and forth. We're going to limit the impact of this horticultural society to the local economy.
But you wait till the end of the campaign. There'll be horticultural society branches everywhere.
If that's a plot line, I'm 100% down. But let it be one of the plot lines.
Consider it locked in.
Great. All right, why don't we take a break here? We'll come back on the other side and do a little bit of role playing to figure out who Raven Thornleaf is. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. So we're going to do a little bit of role playing before our characters become adventurers. This is happening at an undisclosed time in the past, not too terribly long before our campaign starts, not more than a couple years, maybe even only a few months.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to be focusing on your job as a warden and its intersection with your position in society as this horticulturalist, gardener, groundskeeper sort of position.
Yes.
Now, one of the core tenets of Warden is that you're here to keep an eye out for anything unusual. You're here to protect whatever secrets may exist and uncover any secrets that might exist, but keep them within the family of protection. Right?
Wait, so if I were to find something myself that I felt was unusual or might be a secret of some sort, I would want to investigate it.
Absolutely. You'd certainly want to investigate it and then bring it to the overseer.
Right.
Yeah. If you thought it was noteworthy. Even if it was only mildly noteworthy, you might bring it to the overseer, depending on what it is. If you find a weird rock in the ground with glowing runes, you probably bring it to them right away. But
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So one day, you're doing your warden thing. You don't wear your armor because it's too heavy for you. So what other symbol of wardenness would you carry? Is it your short sword that you would strap to your waist as I am doing my wardenly duties right now?
Well, I noticed that I haven't described what Rivet looks like.
Yes.
So they're 5'3", androgynous, very slight build, sort of relatively short, really white blonde hair, quite a feminine face. Typically just wears kind of a white shirt tucked on into brown pants made out of, I don't know what you would make them out of, normal pant material. The shirt's quite baggy. They've got kind of a lot of silver or silver plated necklaces and quite a few different rings on and bangles and things like that, so wears quite a lot of jewelry, and just generally looks really relaxed and wholesome and demure. And yeah, I guess when on wardening duty, rather than having a kind of machete / kukri thing at their side, they've instead got an actual short sword, but still wearing the same clothes. So, boots, brown pants, sort of large white shirt with most of the buttons open.
Okay. Excellent. Great. So you're doing your wardenly thing. And today's job is the same as it is almost every day. It's explore the island, see if there's anything that's changed. Sometimes weather will uncover bits here or bits there. Interesting things have been found in the past. Once, not too long ago, maybe 15 years ago, there was a storm that came through, and part of the rains created a bit of a mudslide in one area, which unveiled some old fortress remains from long ago. People came and sort of like excavated and dug around, thinking maybe this is part of the original floating fortress. It was very exciting for a moment until you realize that this is actually just, part of the other fortress. Other is in big air quotes here, because once upon a time this island had fortifications on it to defend things, which generally probably aren't the floating fortress.
Sounds like there's a lot of ambiguity and unknowns. But
right.
I guess they found a lot of fortress remains on the island that have seemed uninteresting. And the theory is that they're from some sort of land structure that was here, but not the actual floating fortress.
Right. And when 1,500 years ago at the start of the last age, there was a big, terrible things. The storm erupted, lightning bolts rained down from the skies, the seas rose. The rest of Ferodia kind of got swept inland by like large tidal waves, which sort of salted the earth there for a little while. This area has a freshwater lake all the way around it. So like when the lake kind of swept over the land, it washed people out to sea, but it didn't poison the land with salt water. So everything here was kind of fine. But it also did cover a bunch of things and, bring silt and dirt and blah, blah, blah all around. So part of your job is to like look for anything that might have been recently uncovered or pushed up by the earth, because every now and then the earth like brings things to the surface.
Can I ask how big the island is?
Yes. I'm
wondering, would it be feasible to walk around the perimeter of the island every day, or?
You can do it in a day. I think it's about 20 miles in circumference. I made these measurements earlier. I'm looking for my notes. I think it's 3 miles across. No, that can't be right, because circumference is diameter pi. So it's 7 miles across.
Yeah, okay. I think that something Riven would do from time to time is go out on a sort of 2-day trek where they'd start off in the morning, kind of walk half the circumference of the island, camp overnight somewhere, and then do the second half the next day to get back home. And he'd probably do that once a month, maybe once every 2 months, something like that. So I feel like they know the island well at this point. They've walked every inch of it. They know so you're talking about the landscape changes or new rocks being uncovered. They'd be well aware of that. They spend a lot of time acknowledging the shape of the wilderness and the state of the nature around them. So if something's changed, they'd notice it.
Perfect. Right. So
Plus,
the island is sort of oval shaped. It's 4 miles across the thin way and 9 miles long the long way. Okay. And with a hill that kind of crests across the back of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say as well, any secret doors or anything like that, obviously.
Obviously.
I'm seeing that shit.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there are no secret doors that you found yet. But today, as you're walking around the island, reviewing sections of it, doing your little perimeter search, but not just the coastline, coming in and out and exploring things, you come across hold on. You come across a strange plant. Not that it's strange in general, but that it shouldn't be in this place. It's a cardinal flower, which is, according to your herbalism proficiency, a plant that usually needs to exist in riparian zones, areas near rivers. You might see it near the lake or along a creek or a stream or someplace that has a lot of water flow to it. And you're in the middle of a freshwater lake, so there's a lot of water around. But this particular section of the island that you're looking at is on that shallow slope of the hill. And this area has pretty rocky, sandy soil with not a lot of water in it. And there's no reason why cardinal flower could be growing here, should be growing here. The soil here far too dry, far too sandy to support this plant in any way, shape, or form. There's, in fact, no way this plant could be growing here, which is what's drawing your attention to it.
All right, so I'm kind of like walking through the landscape here. I'm imagining that there's a sort of slight stream to my left, and then on the other side of the stream, the hill rises, and then that's where there's the more dry land that you're talking about. So looking over across the stream, the red color of the plant you described kind of catches their eye. Sort of stop, take a minute to sort of look at it and just like confirm the things you've just said, that it doesn't make sense that plant is there. So they kind of...
Yeah, I mean, usually you'll even see this either growing right on the edge or even growing up out of the water, so its roots are consistently submerged. It's sometimes an aquatic plant, and here it is on a sandy, dry hill.
So
impossible.
I will sort of walk down towards the edge of the stream and find like a crossing point to kind of like hop over and very gracefully, hop lightly from rock to rock and get across the stream, and then start heading up the other side of the hill. And as I'm crossing the stream, I probably see some of these plants in the water or on the edges of the banks of the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I will take my kukri from my belt. Or no, I'm wardening now, so I've got my short sword. Yeah, but okay, so I take like just like a little knife or something that I've got, and I'll cut one of the cardinal flowers stems like from the river, and sort of take it with me as I get across the other side and head up the edge to where I see the one growing out. And the first thing I do is I get closer and see, like, is it alone or is there more of these?
This seems to be a fairly young stock, judging with your skills, maybe a couple weeks old, maybe a month old at this point that it's like sprouted out of the ground. Its red flowers are only now being shown.
So I'll kind of crouch down, and the first thing I'll do is I'll like touch the soil there. So I'll like pick up a bit of the soil in my hand and check if it's as dry and sandy as I would expect it to be.
Yeah, it's not particularly loamy. It's quite dry. It's near the creek, but you haven't had any rain in a little while, so it's just kind of, earth, dry earth.
And I'll like start to like move away some of the earth around the base of the plant and see if the soil starts to change as it gets like a bit deeper.
It certainly does not.
So I'm intrigued. This is not what I expected. Like I maybe expected that, there was like an under pocket of water here or something had changed. So in my interests, I'll keep slowly like moving away the soil to expose more and more of the parts of the plant that would be under the ground, getting to the roots and things like that.
Yeah, you can dig down. You can find that its roots are not that deep right now. These plants do tend to have, fairly... not deep, but like moderately deep roots. It's a youngish plant. Its roots are well formed, but certainly not existing in the sort of environment that would allow it to live. You've only got maybe a couple inches of earth before you start hitting real rocks, and that like backbone, ridgy, rocky part of the mountainside.
Now that I get a bit closer to it and I see that it's a younger version of the plant, I'll look at the one that I cut from the river that maybe is a bit older and a bit more developed. So I'm going to head back down to the river and try and find a specimen that is of equivalent kind of like maturity to the one on the hillside.
Easy peasy. You walk up and down the creek for a little while. Sure enough, you find a younger variety.
So I'll carefully remove that from the ground and try and preserve as much of the root structure as possible. And then I'll head back up to the other one and try and do a comparison, a more close analysis of the two to see if there's any differences between them.
They both look within the range of normal for these plants. One of them...
Go
ahead.
There's no like specific details of the strange one that would, like maybe it's grown with less water presence, so the roots are longer and thicker or something like that. Considering
the different growing conditions, you would expect to have different features. You would expect the one in a drier area to be thinner. You would expect it to have like weaker structures, fewer leaves, be less mature. This is not the case. This plant seems to be extremely healthy. It seems to be growing quite fine in soil really not meant for it.
Okay. I'll now try. Go on. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say it's got these, lovely little red leaves on the tops of its stems. It's got green leaves down below, and then red sort of flowering leaves up above. It's very pretty.
I will examine the soil around this plant to see if there's any underdeveloped, like other plants growing of the same type nearby.
No, this is the only one. You've got other grasses that can live in this sort of soil that get periodic rain and are fine with that. This is alone. It's the only thing here that is like this.
Aside from a lack of water, do I think is there any other conditions about where this is that might stop it from being able to grow successfully? Like, is there anything I could do to help it? Like, like cover it from the wind a little bit, or I don't know. I don't know enough about plants and stuff. You know more than me.
Yeah, well,
I want to try and give it the best chance.
Right. Well, the best chance for this sort of plant is in very wet areas, very marshy areas, right along river sides, or even partially
aside from that, though.
Right.
The
they like partial shade, and this has got partial shade right here. They like, a certain type of nutrient profile, which is usually found in these areas. It's hard to judge nutrient profile in this day and age. You kind of just judge it based on if things are growing well, and this thing seems to be growing well. But yeah, it's water, light, and nutrients. Plants are pretty simple.
Okay. I will put the soil back around this one, and then I will do my best to plant the juvenile sample that I took nearby in soil that I think is more or less equivalent, and try and set that up to take root and be able to grow there as well.
So you're taking the one from the creek and you're putting it here to see if it also does well.
Yeah, and then I will set it up as best as I can to give both the best chance at succeeding. And I'll carry on my walk. I don't know if you expected more of me here, but I don't want to pick the thing. I'm just going to leave it. And my plan is to, I'll walk past this thing again very, very soon. And I'm going to just keep an eye on it and see if it continues to grow. Every time I pass here, I'll probably check in on it again, see how both are doing, see if the sample is taking root, see if I feel like there's something strange with this particular plant or whatever.
Yeah, well, you come back a month later, and the two plants are now doing quite well side by side. They seem to be happy.
And is there evidence of any further ones growing?
No, not yet. These plants do proliferate either through seeding or through just like dividing. Another one might sprout from the same root structure, but they don't do that often, right? That happens seasonally. So it's not been time for that. But both plants are doing fine, even the one that was pulled from the wet area.
I will take out a little journal that I've got, and I will be making drawings of the plants and taking notes about their development. And I intend to continue this journal as I check on it. And in the interest
I am
of
so
the
sorry.
I'm
so sorry. You're illiterate. It's the first time you've played an illiterate character in a long time. Paper's also a pretty unusual thing here. You can keep these thoughts in your mind. You are a horticulturalist by trade, so you can make notes of these and hold them fairly well.
I will take drawings of them. At the least, I can do that, right?
Yeah, you can maybe bring over some, unfold some bark and use some coal or charcoal to do some sketches. Take some time and sharpen your coal and do a line, and sharpen your coal and do some line.
And then I will go home and discuss it with my mother, and she can write the notes.
Great,
because she is the steward of the Ankaran Horticulturalist Society. So this is of interest to her and to the whole society. Actually, in fact, we might need to send a letter to Rascala because this is big news.
Right. So you can bring this to your mom. And what do you say?
I say, so I'm imagining I'm getting back to the house in the late afternoon. And as I'm walking down the path past the hedgerows, which are beautifully maintained to get to the other side where the back gateway is that you would go in if you were going to visit the tea garden, I take a moment in a little pond that's nearby to check my reflection and like clean off any dirt from my face, kind of like wipe down like the mud off my shirt, and just make sure that my appearance is not too shabby, because I am going into a demure, mindful, cutesy place with paying customers. I will sheathe my short sword into my sword belt and unbuckle it and hold it sort of like in my hand, like the belt and the scabbard and everything together, to imply that, you know, it's not for use. And then I will walk into the tea garden, opening the lovely little iron wrought gate, and close it behind me, and look across the few tables that are scattered there to find Ashin sitting at a table drinking a nice cup of tea with a pot next to her, and I can see my mother in the kitchen, kind of like preparing some drinks, and there's I think maybe like another couple of people who are sat at one of the little tables that are having some tea as well. So I will nod a greeting to Ashin as I come in, and then say, "Hi there, have a nice day," to the couple that are drinking, and I will like walk past up the path into the house and into the kitchen. And I'll say, "Mother, I'm home. Do you need a hand with anything?"
No, it's all taken care of, Riven. How was your walk?
Very peaceful. Yeah, everything's great. And I'll head into the back room and like put my sword belt down and take off my boots and sort of like sit down for a minute. You know, mindfully.
Yeah.
And then after a minute or two, I take out the book that I was looking at, and I'll head back into the kitchen, and I'll say, if you're not too busy, would you have a few moments to talk about some plants that I saw out there?
Of course. She'll come on over, softly on the balls of her feet, and take a look at this. You say book. I want to emphasize that people are poor.
It's bark.
Yeah, bark.
Yeah. I'll say, I was walking across the ridge by the stream. I want to give a name to the stream. Like, I don't know, a name for a stream. She knows what I'm talking about specifically, is the point I'm trying to get across. And I say, and across the banks of the river, on the edges of the shallow hills, I saw a cardinal flower growing there, much too far from the river to really take root and thrive there. And I did take some drawings, and I like show her the ones that I drew the first time I saw it. And I even took a sample from in the creek nearby and planted it up there next to it to see what would happen, because I was confused as to how it could grow there. And I've just been back, it's a month later, and look, and I show her the new picture and say, it's thriving, they're both thriving. But how can that be? There's no water that far up the hill. The soil's dry and sandy.
Well,
maybe it's a new variant?
No, it probably has to do with the ley lines, she says. And this is something you've heard your mother say before.
Okay.
Now, you're in the real world, Nick. You're in your mid-30s, right? You've gotten to the age where you're starting to see your parents as like regular humans in addition to being parental figures. And your character,
Yes.
Riven, is 60 years old. You're older than your mother was when she had you. And one of the things that you've learned about her is that elves have like a very different educational society. They teach via the Socratic method. They have people walk the land and learn things on their own, and they're there to provide guidance, but it's not so much like sit down, learn these facts, memorize them. It's a lot more like experience this for yourself, and eventually you will find the right path. But your mother's formal education, elven education, was interrupted and stopped. And so she has all of this like half-known knowledge that when you were young seemed really amazing. And now that you're a little bit older, you're like, ooh, she has like a partial education, and she doesn't actually know any of these things for sure. She's never really been told. She was like told to intuit some stuff and then stopped intuiting stuff and is now like spewing information that like is maybe not the most reliable. And she's a lovely person. She's a great gardener, leader of the horticultural society and everything. But this is one of those things that she's mentioned to you from time to time where she talks about like, oh yeah, the land here, the ley lines, it makes everything wonderful. And you're like, yeah, Mom, the ley lines, uh-huh. And in the past, you might have asked her like, what's a ley line? And she's like, oh, it's where the magical energies come through. And you're like, uh-huh, can you show me one? And she like will take you to a spot and be like, can't you feel the magic here? And you're like, well, it's a right, that sort of...
Yeah,
like...
Okay. But that's less suspicious in this world than in ours because magic does exist.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. But she gives you this answer of like, it's the ley lines, which might have real truth to it, or it might be, you know, quarter educated elf outside of her elements chucking things up to, I don't know what. There's just a little bit of history.
I think that's a good point, but I think you've also got to remember that she's had more education than me, probably.
Yeah.
And also is quite an impressive person with her
Certainly.
Stats. So I'm not sure that I would be so dismissive.
That's great. What would you say then?
I would say the ley lines. You said that's to do with magic, though, right? Why would magic make this plant grow there? Magic doesn't usually concern itself with the intentions and trials and tribulations of plants, does it?
Well, magic is a broad thing. We wouldn't say that. She kind of taps her fingers together a little bit. We wouldn't really say that forging metal has much to do with water either, but when you get into it, you use water to quench steel, and the charcoal, which fuels the furnace, is made from plants which need water to grow. And the ore that becomes the iron is washed from its rocks with water as well. It's a deep part of the process, and ley lines are rifts through which the primal energies of the world come through, and one of those primal forces is water. And so if that plant is growing right on a ley line, it might just be fed water through the rifts.
You know where you can feel them, right? Maybe we should go for a walk there at some point, and you can see if this is in one of the ley lines, and maybe we'll see more of these flowers grow up along the ley lines. In fact, maybe the whole island, we can trace the ley lines with the beautiful plants and flowers that will grow there.
She blinks at you a few times. Why would we do that?
Well, to see if it's real.
What do you mean to see? Of course it's real.
To see a glimpse of it in real life. Something that we can see and measure.
Oh, sweetie. Sometimes you take after your father's human side so much. We don't need to see and measure and annotate everything in order to experience it and enjoy it.
Well, even so, there's something beautiful about it. I'd like you to see it with me.
Well, I'd be happy to see that. I do love myself some cardinal flowers. They're quite lovely. You don't see a lot of these things that are red all year long here. Be great.
Good. Well, when we close the tea garden, then we can go, or perhaps in the morning?
Let's do it in the morning.
Of course. Well, I'm going to go and get changed and get clean, but if you need help with anything when I'm down, let me know.
Will do. And she goes back out to the garden, passing off the latest in honey cakes to the locals.
Yeah, I collect my box. And do I have a room?
You do?
I will go to my room. And I close the door behind me. And I lay the box down. I place them down on my desk. Sit down on the bed. I brought my shoes up with me. I put them back in the cupboard. And I'll get changed and go to the bucket of water that I've got here and sort of clean myself up a little bit and put some new clothes on, and then sit back down at the desk and place the two sort of drawings that I've got down on the desk and kind of look at them for a minute. And then after that, does my mother have any books on flowers?
She does not.
So there's no picture books or anything like that I could look up?
No. This is a pretty small backwater village, 1,200 people total. paper is pretty expensive, and this place doesn't have a lot of exports. You do have some leather workers. You might have some vellum around. You might have some papyrus, which is a little bit cheaper around. But by and large, record keeping like that isn't a thing that happens here a lot. Even the ancient secrets of the floating fortress of Ferris were kept through oral tradition to kind of preserve the secrets so notes couldn't be taken. Yeah.
Okay. I spend 10 minutes or so sitting at the desk looking at these things and getting a little bit, not maybe bored or feeling like there's no more to learn. I sort of gather them up, I put them in my belt, and is it like a 2-story building or a 1-story building?
I think it's a 1-story cottage.
With a thatch roof?
Yep. Thatch roof, stone walls. The walls here were built from the remains of ruins that were pulled down at the start of the last age. But thatch roof that's maintained.
I will, from my room, I open my window, and I sort of climb out the window a little bit, and then there's some vines running up the wall near my window. I'll climb up them, which as I do often, and go and sit on the thatch roof by the chimney.
Perfect.
And in the nook of the chimney, I've got a small little box there that I open up, and there's a pipe and some herbs, and I'll sit here with my back against the chimney, smoking this pipe and watching the sunset. And I sort of lay the 2 drawings of the barks down next to me, and I just kind of sit here for a few hours, wait for the sun to set, smoke my pipe, consider the events of the day, just take it all in. There's maybe even some little bits of flowers, I've picked some flowers from the garden and woven them into the thatch on the chimney. Then I'll replace them every now and again, so it's always quite nice up here.
You would also know that cardinal flowers, if you dry their leaves, not the red part, but the green leaves on them, and let them dry out fully, they can be smoked in the same way that tobacco can be. So I don't know if that's actually what you're smoking here, if you have tobacco or some other plant, but just as a side note, that is
I think there's a rotation of things that Riven will smoke. So they'll definitely at some point have smoked these dried green leaves of the cardinal plant, but I don't think that's what they've got today. But the thought perhaps does strike at some point in this 3-hour thing that maybe that's what. Well, maybe that's another avenue of of investigation. I think I want to get across most of my characters are usually very driven and trying to achieve something, whereas Riven's not really like that. This is a thing that is interesting, and we're talking about it because you presented it, but it's only one of many. It's not all encompassing or anything like that. The general day-to-day life is, more important. It's just an interesting thing to consider from time to time. So for this day, they consider it whilst watching the sunset.
Okay. Well, the sun will set. You'll wake up tomorrow. There's a whole new slew of activities to do. It's a little bit rainy today. It's coming down a smidge. Your mom doesn't usually mind the rain. The tea shop will shut down because the humans typically mind the rain, but her elven nature is very one with nature. The rain is not a problem. We can dry off as needed, or we can take shelter as needed.
I come down in the morning then, having seen the rain not down because it's 1 floor, but I come out of my room in the morning having seen the rain, and I come into the kitchen and I'll say, look at this. The gods are smiling on us. The rain. You don't have to work. We can go for a walk.
Splendid. I was hoping you would say that, she says, folding up her apron and pulling out or setting into the oven some cornbread that she is making. Your staple grain here is corn. All your wheat and flour has to be imported, so all your breads are cornbread types. Side note. So she sets the cornbread into the oven, which is not lit yet. She'll bake it later, and grabs a shawl for her shoulders to step out. Puts on shoes, which she doesn't often do. She likes to go around barefoot, elven natureness. But if you're going to be walking through the mud and through creeks and maybe rocks, some simple sandals for a little bit of protection will help here.
Yeah.
And gets ready to step out. She will take with her quarter staff that she uses when walking through the woods. Just a little walking stick, but you've also seen her with that 19 dex. It's a thin enough staff that she can kind of twirl it in her fingers, and you've always gotten the impression that while she's not a fighter and she's not a warrior by any stretch of the imagination, like, she walks with this staff all the time and uses it as an extension of her own body. And you get the impression that she might, she could probably hit something with this pretty hard, but it's never come up.
I think another thing, which is like, she'd be very hard to hit in a fight with 14 base AC.
Yeah.
Like, just having 19 dex is already kind of like quite formidable in a kind of physical altercation.
Yeah.
Cool. So as we're about to leave, I remember and I jog around the side of the house to the back gate to the tea garden, and I open it up and I go round the side of the hedgerow there and pull out a sort of slate sign that we've got. And I take it out with me, I close the gate, and then I point the slate sign in front of the gate, and it's got like basically like an image of like closed due to rain. It's like some sad people in the rain. And I put that there just to show that the garden is closed. And I run back around to the front, and I'll say, "Okay, let's get going." I went the usual route, so there's no reason to take a shortcut. We might as well take it all in.
She walks with you, happy to talk about these things, and the topic of ley lines she brings up on her own. Mm-hmm. It's raining, and she mentions that one of the reasons that this place is so lovely, is such a great land for growing, and why we've always got plentiful fresh water here is these ley lines, and it's probably got to do a lot with your flower and why it's growing in this unusual place. And she proceeds to talk about them in that way that, you ever have a conversation with someone where they have like learned a new interesting fact and they try to use it all the time, but like there's no depth to it? It's just sort of super surface detail. And she seems to be attributing like, the reason this giant lake that we're in right here, where it has 4 exits and no apparent interest, that's also the ley lines. There's all this water coming up in the middle of the lake, just bubbling up because of the ley lines. And the good rain that we got, it's because of the ley lines. And the flowers are growing in there because of the ley lines. And it's just, it comes with this, there's no more to it. Yeah.
I think, though, that Riven isn't very conflict-oriented and doesn't make a point of, like, trying to correct or pick holes in what she's saying, and more or less kind of goes along with it and has the conversation. And, maybe it's not true, maybe it is, as long as you approach it with a healthy level of critical thought. There's no harm in entertaining it. So I will we go, that's really fascinating. And when did you learn about this? In the woodlands?
In the Rochecore, as the humans here call it, she says, speaking common with you, just the default that you fall into when you live in the human lands. Yeah. It's one of those principles that I wish I had stuck around more to learn about. I only ever really got a small taste for it, but there's the 4 primal energies that make the world happen, and the 5th that binds it all together. And we're very blessed here to be in this spot of this wellspring of energy.
Well, there's a reason why Ferris made his fortress here.
Parked it here, sweetie, she says, giving you just a little bit of motherly corrections.
That's fine. I'll take that.
But yes, I think so. A wise, powerful man like him would certainly be in touch with the ordinary, or the extraordinarily ordinary forces of nature.
Of course, yeah. And, Mother, don't be so down on yourself. You're still young. I'm sure once these cultists are dealt with, if you wanted to finish your education, now that Father's not here anymore, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's what he'd want for you.
Well, as sure as it's raining today, you can bet I will make my way home at the appropriate time. But that brings a good question up. You've been a warden for a little while now. That's a pretty important role. It's a role that is deeply rooted in this town. If you're a warden, do you think that they would let you visit the homeland? I know humans are precious about time. Do you think you could take 4 or 5 years and go visit the woods?
The Overseer is a tolerant and a thoroughly great man or woman, depending. But 4 or 5 years is a long time for humans. I'm not sure about 4 or 5 years, but certainly I could visit.
Yeah. It is a shame how kind of looks at the village that you guys are passing now. It certainly is a shame how short their lives are. You know, if you were a human, you would be at the end of your age now. All the kids you grew up with are grandparents at this point.
It's a tragedy. It's a blessing or a curse, I'm not sure. Martha saw fit to grant us more life than the humans. I shrug and, but at what cost? All we can do is make the most of our time here. And, I think that's a point. I mean, the dating scene here is not exactly flourishing, but perhaps one day I'll have a child of my own. I can pass them on to be a warden, and then maybe I can come and join you for some studies.
She pauses as you say that and looks at you and does the do you know what you just said?
I don't say that. Yeah. Wait, I obviously know that.
No, I mean, you could adopt. There are methods, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. I don't think I say that though. Sorry, I forgot about the whole. I forgot about the whole
Gotcha.
childbirthing thing. Yeah, well, being a warden, it's not necessarily a lifetime role. I mean, Ashen still lives and she passed it on to me, so there's no reason why I can't do the same.
She's
by the time
old and retired. She has a reason to set it down. But you're right.
That's true, but
maybe
I didn't make an oath for life. I swore to fulfill my duties and act as well as possible in their interests, and I will do, but the town only needs 12 wardens. There are lots of... I mean, have you seen the Smith's son? If you went back 10 years, he was barely a boy, and now look at him.
It's true.
He's a new warden. In 10 years' time, there'll be someone far more deserving than me, and I can hand the title over to them, and I'm sure find much peace in your homeland.
A lifetime of stewardship for the humans is 30 or 40 years. If you do 20, 30, 40 years as a warden, you should be free of your responsibilities.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've not spoke to the Overseer about it, but perhaps Ashen will have some wisdom in this regard. She surely knows of the rules around retiring and things like that, but these are questions for much later days, Mother. The cultists still siege the woodlands, sadly, and there are many years, many seasons to pass between now and our final days, so I'm certain our future will have time to study together, spend time amongst the ancient trees together. That I'm sure.
I hope so. I would love you to meet your grandfather again. She says, referring to a particular tree in the woods that she's always brought you to and said, this is your grandfather tree.
It's a tree, not a person.
It's a tree. Yeah.
Yes, I too would like to see him again. Would I say him or it?
Him?
Yeah.
In Elven, there's not quite the discrepancy. A tree would have a gender neutral term. You wouldn't have male or female. That's not true. Trees can be male or female. Yes.
Sometimes in the moments that come soon after waking, in that state somewhere between sleep and awake, I can still feel the hum of his roots when I touched his bark as a child.
Mm-hmm. She nods.
So we continue to walk through the rain, having a lovely time.
Yeah, you get to the spot a few miles from town where the hill begins to rise, and there's the 2 cardinal flowers just vibing right next to each other.
So I say, as we round the corner and they come into view, I say, this is it. This is where they are. Although perhaps you won't believe me as to the dryness of the soil now with all this rain. But I sort of scamper down the hill towards the creek and across the crossing that I talked about earlier.
Yeah. She'll come on over with you, hopping over the creek gracefully, checks the spot, kind of gives a quick look up and a quick look down and nods her head. No, I believe you about the dryness. On this hillside here, and she pulls out a small little carved like wooden dowel and kind of pokes at the ground a little bit. It's got a pointy end, and poke it down as far as it can go until it hits stone, which is not that far down. She'll nod again. Ground here is quite hard. Rocky down below, sandy up top. Certainly no way this could be here under purely natural means. She looks at it a little bit curious, both sides.
So this is the original one. This one here was actually in the creek originally, and I brought it up here and planted it, and it seems to be thriving just as well. So maybe you're right. It's the ground that's magical, not the flower.
Well, let's take a cutting, bring it home.
That's what I was going to do next, but I wanted it to grow a bit healthier first, but it seems to be in good shape now.
Let's propagate. Let's see if it grows some. Let's see if this same original one can grow in another dry spot. Maybe
that's smart.
Bring one of the pots inside, underwater it intentionally, see what happens.
Great idea, Mother. You do amaze me. And I'll pull out my kukri and take a cutting of it.
Yep.
And I'll do both, I guess, as well as a control. As a control.
Fantastic.
Yeah. In fact, I get two controls. I get a cutting from the one that I planted, a cutting from the original magic one, and then another cutting of one of similar age from the creek.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. You bring your 3 cuttings home, holding them. Your mom has one, you have one in your left hand, you have one in your right hand, so that they don't get confused at all. You can put them in 3 different pots, place them next to each other on the inside of your house, where they'll get some shade, some light, and underwater them intentionally.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And if we've got other plants in the garden that grow in the same soil that's on the side of the hill, we can maybe take some of the earth from those pots to replicate the type of soil to begin with.
Perfect. Yeah, you do have a couple of succulents that definitely need more low moisture settings. So you have perfect soil for that already.
Perfect. Yeah, great. All right, we got ourselves an experiment.
Great. Yeah, you can set these down. Some time will pass. You'll watch them grow. And you'll find that all 3 of them wither fairly quickly. Yeah.
Well. Isn't that something?
I suppose. She says nonchalantly, like the mysteries and interests of the world are ordinary matters that aren't that gripping to her.
But I sort of walk after her as she walks off. But this means that you're right. It must be the ley line.
Yes, and?
I sort of smile at her and say, nothing, I guess. Nothing. And I sort of smile to myself and go off and do something else. And I think from Riven's point of view, it's you were doubting your mother, but actually she knows what she's talking about.
She knows a little something. Yeah. She does not maybe know as much as you might like, right? There's
You're trying to sell me that, Neil, and I hear it and I'm batting it away. I've got faith, okay?
Good.
She was right. We did an experiment. It worked. The ground is at least special in that area.
There is something unusual.
Yeah. In fact, seeing the plants starting to die, which fills me with a sense of sadness.
Mm-hmm.
I actually feel remorse for having taken these clippings and brought them back here. So I will, once I kind of see them all failing and it's confirmed the result of the experiment, I will take all 3 of them and head back out to the spot to replant them and try and save them.
All right. You replant them. You'll do your best, hope to save them.
Yeah.
Now, this is where we're getting to with this storyline here, is that you found something unusual. Is this a part of nature that is fundamental to the world? Or is this something to do with the fortress that needs to be reported to the overseer?
Yeah, well, I think that the thing is, the overseer is a busy guy, slash woman. They're busy, you know, they've got a lot of stuff going on. I'm not going to go and bother them with something that's probably got another explanation until I've thoroughly investigated it myself. So the last stage of this is going to be replanting them and seeing if I can get them to regrow. And I'm going to try and... I can't write, so I'm not going to write a report. But I'm going to compile a story in my own mind as to the investigation that I've done, the sort of possibilities that I've eliminated, and a possible explanation being the ley lines that my mother's explained to me from her elven education, which might mean to the overseer, he probably knows that she's full of shit, but to me, that's like a thing that I'll refer to. And then you know, and then I'll go to the overseer and bring it to them. Okay. And I'm imagining that there is some sort of like regular check-in. So I'd probably raise it at a regular check-in. I'm not going out of my way to tell them. It's like, okay, well, I'm scheduled to see the overseer in 2 weeks anyway. So
at the monthly meeting, you bring
I'll
it
bring
up.
it up then. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. You you return everything to their original spots, or you plant them all at the one spot where you found the new cardinal flowers?
No, I plant all three at the spot with the new cardinal flowers.
Okay. Well, the original cardinal flower that you found there does manage to successfully reroot itself and grow, and the other two that you took cuttings of didn't make it. You know, and sometimes in life, even the best tended to plants fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not like it's not like a hard and fast thing. I could continue and try again and try and get more data, but I think that's probably enough. Without being able to write it down, it becomes a bit troubling to like go into too many steps, doesn't it? So I think like that's enough. So yeah, I sort of satisfy myself with that. I say the story to myself a few times so I understand what I'm going to say, and I kind of like lock it into the long-term memory a little bit. And then, yeah, I'm just going to keep it there until it's time to go and meet the overseer.
All right.
And then I carry on, you know, I tend to the common grounds in the town. I keep doing patrols around the perimeter. I keep spending the evenings watching the sunset on my roof. I do eventually collect some green leaves from the cardinal flowers that are growing there and dry them out. And use them as tobacco.
Lovely. So you've got a nice little character going here. Very quiet, very soft, very interested in the things around her, but doesn't seem to be particularly driven by any passions at this point in time.
No, I think they're just happy with their life. They've got a peaceful life, and you know they're half elven, so their lifespan is long, and their propensity for just taking their time with things is is quite great. So yeah, you know, they're not particularly like emboldened to go out and take great action. But kind of just waiting for life to change, you know.
Yeah, I seem to notice when the plants were beginning to die, your transplants, you desired to go back and fix them, to give them an opportunity. Does that speak to a like internal protective instinct? Or is that more of just like a love of plants and not wanting to see them die? What is that? What's that called to?
But like I said, like Riven and Ellis, their mother, are both very kind of like nurturing, kind, like people to be around, and they do have like a strong desire for protection and making sure that the other people and things around them are well and happy and safe. And obviously, as they're a lover of plants, that extends to plants as well as it extends to animals as well, as just a general respect for the like a kind of thing that I think like most elves would feel. Really,
is that
like
why
a commitment to nature? Well, it's just part of who they are. You know, their mother is like that. That's how they've been raised. And as a half elf growing up outside of the elven lands, you know, they kind of lean into their elven traits to feel like close to it.
Is this why you accepted the position of Warden? Because you have an internal protective instinct? Or is that more of a symbolic relationship with
Ashen? It's
Ashen.
more about respect for Ashen.
Okay.
And respect for the title itself.
Tell me
Like,
about
as
the
in,
respect for the title itself.
As in, it would be rude to turn it down. It's an honor to be a warden, so it would it wouldn't look good,
Right.
To do that. And I think they're the kind of people, they want to be seen to be doing the right thing. They want to be well liked. They want to be seen to be respectful and a good person and a good citizen. And turning that down is not what a good citizen would do. It's a calling. So if it calls for you, then you accept it. So I think Riven is a reluctant warden, but still has sort of respect for it, though.
Right. This is not your dream in life, but now that you're here, you're certainly going to do it due diligence and follow through on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Great. That's going to be it for our character creation. Just a little bit of a taste of Riven here. We'll get to know them more as the campaign continues. Thank you so much, Nick, for making a character who feels very different than your other characters.
Yes, I've felt that clearly Arrakis was very heavily similar to other characters in the past, most notably Malachi. And I wanted to do something really different. I have a certain class in mind that I'm kind of hoping for, but I think I've only ever played human males. Only ever. Literally never anything else. No, wait, I did play a gnome once, but that was when Greg was DMing, so I don't know if that necessarily counts. Although that was a great character. Oh my god, I had so much fun with that. But,
And you played, I think, an elf in Cosmo's Kitchen.
oh, that's true, the French
But
elf.
those
yes.
were one shots or two shots. They don't really count.
God, what a great... I can't believe I played a French character that got eaten by a giant snail. That's just amazing. But yeah, I'm really excited about Riven, actually. I had the idea for the slight half-elf gardener, and I'm doing the non-binary thing just because in my head I couldn't determine whether I wanted to play a male or a female. I kind of wanted to play a female character, but I don't want to do the accent. I don't want to do like a voice. And actually, I think it's quite a cool idea to be androgynous. I'm going to try my best to, do it respectfully, hopefully.
I think you'll do a fine job. D&D is a wonderful tool to sort of explore things outside of your normal wants and interests, playing evil characters or playing people who are nothing like yourself. So go nuts, man. It'll be great.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think being a gardener is cool. I'm really excited to see where the campaign's going. I'm super hyped to explore the floating fortress, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, in this campaign, the reason we're doing all of these solo sessions ahead of time before the campaign starts is to see, because we're going to be playing relatively ordinary people who have an extraordinary thing happen that launches them into this adventure. So no one here really, well, we've only done 2 characters so far, but the default characters are maybe not prone to adventure. And so we're going to give everyone a little bit of a kick, which will hopefully take these people who want to just like hang out and bring them into maybe positions that they never intended for themselves and are reluctantly accepting, hopefully.
Yeah.
If all goes well.
Great. Good. Yeah, well, I think that I've got the perfect character for that because I've already done a bit of reluctant acceptance. I already talked about how there's like a lingering sense of guilt from their mother for not going back to defend against the Varasi siege. And maybe a desire to do things differently this time around for Riven. So, yeah.
All right. Cool. Great. Well, we will be back next time with someone else's character creation, probably Peachals. But I don't know what order you're watching this in, so we'll catch you then. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.